Morning Luke, morning Jack, morning Frankie. I'm going to read some more of the Watership down. Found out where I am, so get start reading. Right. The sooner we're off, the better, I reckon, said Dandelion. I don't much like the look of things after I've persuaded Hawkbit here to join us. I was starting to talk to a few more when I found that Toadfleck's fellow had followed me down the run. I want to know what you're up to, he said, and I don't think he believed me when I told him I was only trying to find out whether any rabbits who wanted to leave the warren. He asked me if I was sure I wasn't working up some kind of plot against the Ferreira, and he got awfully angry and suspicious. It put the wind up me, to tell the truth. I've just brought Hawkwick along and left it at that. I don't blame you, said Hazel. Knowing Toadflex, I'm surprised he didn't knock you off your feet first and ask questions afterwards. All the same, let's wait a little longer. Blackberry ought to be here soon. Time passed. They crouched in silence while the moon shadows moved northwards in the grass. At last, just as Hazel was about to run down the slope to Blackberry's burrow, he saw him come out of his hole, followed by no less than 3 rabbits. One of these, Buckthorn, Hazel knew well. He was glad to see him, for he knew he was a tough, sturdy fellow, who he considered certain to get into the Ozar once he had reached his full weight. But I dare say he's impatient, thought Hazel, or he may come off worse in some scuffle over a doe and taking it hard. Well, with him and Bigwig, at least we shan't be too badly off if we run into any fighting. But I dare say... He did not recognise the other 2 rabbits, and when Blackberry told him their names, Speedwell and Acorn, he was none the wiser. But this was not surprising, for they were typical outskirters, thin-looking 6-monthers, with the strained, wary look of those who are only too well used to the thin end of the stick. They looked curiously at Fiver. From what Blackberry had told them, they had almost expected to find Fiver foretelling doom in a poetic torrent instant. He seemed more calm and more noble than the rest. The certainty of going had lifted a weight of Fiver. More time went slowly by. Blackberry scrambled up into the fern and then returned to the top of the bank, fidgeting nervously and half inclined to bolt at nothing. Hazel and Fiver remained in the ditch, nibbling half-heartedly at dark grass. At last Hazel heard what he had been listening for. A rabbit, or was it 2, approaching from the wood. A few moments later, Bigwig was at the ditch. Behind him came a hefty, brisk-looking rabbit, something over 12 months old. He was well known by sight by all the warren, for his fur was entirely grey, with patches of near white that now caught the moonlight as he sat scratching himself without speaking. This was Silver, a nephew of the Ferreira, who was serving his first month in the Ozar. Hazel could not help feeling relieved that Bigwig had brought only Silver, a quiet, straightforward fellow who had not yet really found his place among the veterans. When Bigwig had spoken earlier of sending out the Ozar, Hazel had been in 2 minds. It was only too likely that they would encounter dangers beyond the warren, and that it would stand in need of some good fighters. Again, if Fiver was right and the whole warren was in imminent danger, then of course they ought to be welcome any rabbit who was ready to join them. On the other hand, there seemed to be no point in taking particular pains to get hold of rabbits who were going to behave like Toadflex. Wherever we settle down in the end, thought Hazel, I'm determined to see that Pimpkin and Fiver aren't sat on and cuffed around until they're ready to run any risk just to get away. But is Bigwig going to see it like that? You know Silver, don't you? Asked Bigwig, breaking his thoughts. Apparently some of the younger fellows in the Ozar have been giving him a thin time, teasing him about his fur, you know, and saying he's only got his place because of the Ferreira. I thought I was going to get some more, but I suppose nearly all the Ozar feel they're very, very well off here. He looked about him. I say, there's not many here, are there? Do you think it's really worth going on this idea? Silver seemed about to speak when suddenly there was a pattering on the undergrowth above and 3 more rabbits came in over the bank from the wood. Their movement was direct and purposeful, quite unlike the earlier haphazard approach from those who had now gathered in the ditch. The largest of the 3 newcomers was in front, and the other 2 followed him. As though under orders, Hazel, sensing at once they had nothing in common with himself and his companions, started up and sat up tensely. Fiver muttered in his ear, "Oh, Hazel, they've come too," but broke off short. Bigwig turned towards them and stared his nose, working rapidly. The 3 came straight up to him. Right, okay, I'm going to stop it there because that can be uploaded, and I'll do another. I can really finish this chapter 4, so